and welcome to Rulebreaker. Today we're going to take a look at how to play as the Clan of Saar in Twilight Imperium 4th edition. These guys have a pretty fascinating playstyle. Their nomadic nature means that they can zip around the board, moving from side to side quite a lot. They can even abandon their home system entirely and still win the game, which is unique in this game. Let's take a look at what you get at the start of the game. So they start with one technology, which is anti-mass deflectors. This one here, it's a blue tech, and that reads, your ships can move into and through asteroid fields. When other players' units use space cannon against your units, apply -1 to the result of each die roll. Yeah, pretty straightforward. PDS fire has a penalty for when firing against you, and you can move in and out of asteroid fields. Again, maneuverability stuff, which is good for the Saar because they like to get around with their unique space docks, which we'll see in a minute. Their starting units are a little sparse. They've got 2 carriers, which is nice. It's always nice to have more than one carrier, especially at the start of the game. They've got a cruiser for moving around really fast. They've got 2 fighters, which is not a lot. It's for soaking up damage more so than anything else. They've got 4 infantry for claiming planets with, and they have a space dock, which is one of their kind of tricks, one of their unique gameplay mechanisms that nobody else has, as you'll see in a moment. Alright, this is the Clan of Saar's home system. It's got 2 planets, Lysis 2 and Rag. In case you're wondering why it's Lysis 2 and not Lysis 1, you can find that information in the race sheet fiction on the back here. It's pretty interesting. It's one of the more interesting races. Anyway, about the planets. Lysis 1 has 1 resource and 0 influence, and Rag has 2 resources and 1 influence. So overall, pretty low numbers here. In fact, I think this is probably the lowest number-wise starting system in the game. And that might even be intentional, because these guys can move around. They can even move their space docks around. Which means that there's no qualms really about sticking around anywhere. You can move around, do what you need to do, and get back out of there. As long as you're able to produce, then you're pretty happy as these guys. They don't have a lot of starting units, but one thing that's interesting is that their space dock doesn't start on a planet, it starts in space, and can move. So you'll see that in a bit more detail in a moment. But basically what I'm trying to say here is, you're not tied to this pretty crummy start system. You can abandon it straight away if you really want to, and it doesn't really affect you, as you'll see in a sec. Okay, here's the front of the Clan of Saar's race sheet. We've got all of their troops here. They've got a very unique space dock, and they've got their special abilities here. I'm actually going to talk about the space dock first. I'm just going to zoom in on that real quick. Okay, instead of a standard space dock, the Saar have a floating factory, as it's called. This thing has a move stat, which is very unique to space docks, and nothing else has that, and has capacity of 4. A standard space dock has some text that says that you can have 3 fighters stationed around it, which is not the same as capacity. Capacity means that it can actually carry infantry if you want, as well as fighters. So that's also quite different to the standard space dock. It has a production of 5 straight off the bat. It doesn't go onto a planet, it sits in space, so its production is always going to be 5 unless you upgrade it later. And it has the text, this unit is placed in a space area instead of a planet. This unit can move and retreat as if it were a ship. If this unit is blockaded, it is destroyed. Blockaded is when enemy ships have moved into the system and destroyed all of the ships there. So if you're in a space combat situation and this is the only unit you've got left in the system, it's automatically destroyed, and yeah, it's gone. Simple as that. So what are the benefits of this? Well, moving your space dock means that you can, get closer to where you want to go, and produce directly there, which is really, really cool. Also, it means that it's not tied to your planets. It's not stuck in your home system, and when you put it down somewhere, it's not stuck there for the entire game. It's maneuverable and can be tactically used and changed whatever way you see fit. So Floating Factory 1, really interesting addition to the Saar arsenal. Alright, coming back up to the rest of the sheet, that's the only troop type that's different to standard stuff. They have the regular troops other than that. And as a result of this really cool troop type, they don't have a lot of text going on with their special abilities. The two that they have here are Scavenge, which reads, after you gain control of a planet, gain 1 trade good. So gaining control of a planet is, you know, conquering it from somebody else, or taking it if it was blank before that. Pretty straightforward. Trade goods are these guys here, which can be used for building stuff and other things in the game. I'm sure you're aware of what trade goods do. The other ability is Nomadic, which is you can score objectives even if you do not control the planets in your home system. So as I've said already, you can pretty much abandon your home system and still score points. That's unique in the game. Nobody else can do that. If you were to take somebody's home planets, they wouldn't be able to score points at all. But you can get away with it scot-free because of your nomadic ability. And that's it. That's their abilities. Nothing too complicated. The versatility of being able to move your space docks around is really an ability instead of up in that section of the player sheet. So don't overlook this key aspect of your race's stuff. The Saar have a pretty basic flagship. Let's zoom in and take a look at this guy. Okay, the Saar flagship, which is a big piece here, really cool ship, is the Son of Rag. It's their flagship. It has a cost of 8, which is pretty standard. It hits on 5s, rolling 2 dice. It has a move of 1, which is whatever, it's not great. And has a capacity of 3, meaning you can carry 3 fighters, 3 infantry, or a combination of the 2 types. It actually has no text ability. I think it's the only flagship that has no text ability. It has sustained damage, just like any other flagship. Also, dreadnoughts have it as well, meaning that you can take a hit and your flagship is turned upside down, and then a second hit would kill it, as opposed to just being killed in one shot. What it does have for itself, however, is anti-fighter barrage, which is usually an ability only seen on the destroyer. What that is a one-time ability at the start of combat. And what this does is it hits only fighters with a 6, and the X4 means that's how many dice you're going to roll. So at the start of space combat, if there are fighters on your opponent's side, you're going to roll 4 dice, as long as Son of Rag is in the fight, of course. And for any 6 that you get on the die roll or higher, you take away some of your opponent's fighters right before any of the real fighting happens. So could be quite an advantage if you've got that going. Also worth noting that the Clan of Saar have 3 commodity max when doing the trade strategy action, meaning that you can fill up to 3 commodities which can be traded for trade goods with other people. 3 is pretty basic, it's pretty standard. A lot of races have 3, it's probably the most average amount there is really. So, you know, treat trade as if you would normally when you're these guys. It's either going to be not really that big a deal, or, you know, it's just what it is. It's not a big part of their play. But 3, you know, you can be a viable trade partner with that. So go for it, try and get some trade goods. Clan of Saar have 2 racial technologies, just like any other race. They have chaos mapping, and they also have a unit upgrade called Floating Factory 2. Let's take a look at chaos mapping first here. It's a blue technology, and you actually start with a blue one already, which is anti-mass deflectors, meaning that you could build this as your first technology if you wanted to. And it reads, other players cannot activate asteroid fields that contain 1 or more of your ships. At the start of your turn, during the action phase, you may produce 1 unit in a system that contains at least 1 of your units that has production. Let's take a little bit of a look at that on the playboard. Alright, so with chaos mapping built, if you happen to have any of your ships in an asteroid field, like in this example here, it doesn't matter how many ships your opponent has nearby or how powerful they are. They just can't activate this system at all. You can use this as a safe haven and not be attacked whatsoever. The second part of the ability, the units with production. At the start of your turn during the action phase, you may produce 1 unit in a system that contains at least 1 of your units that has production. And that means any turn. That turn can be activating a system, it can be playing an action card, it can even be the turn that you pass and decide not to do any more actions. That's something that I only learned recently from the Living Rule Reference 1.2 that was released in June 2019. The way this works essentially is you take a turn, it can be anywhere, it doesn't even have to be the system with the floating space dock in it. It could even be when you're doing an action card or passing, as I mentioned. You can produce a unit in any system that has a space dock. That's really good. That can be something as small as a fighter, or it can be an infantry, or it can be as big as your flagship. And you can do that at the start of your turn, which is really different to how production usually happens. I mean, if you take a quick look at your player mat there, if you see all the way down through actions, production is usually the very last thing that you can do during one of your actions. This allows you to do it right at the very start. So you can save up a bunch of resources, plonk down your flagship as the thing you build at the start of your turn after you've activated a system, and fly in and do some damage, for example. It can only be one unit when you're doing that. You can produce at the end of that turn as well, but it gives you a lot of sneaky ambush tactics that you can employ, making the Clan of Saar really, really interesting for guerrilla warfare, especially because they can move around so much, especially with this little dinky thing here. And speaking of floating factories, the Saar's second technology is Floating Factory 2, which is the upgraded version. It does require 2 yellow technologies to be built before, so you've got a little bit of building to do before you can get there. It has the exact same text. This unit is placed in a space area instead of a planet. This unit can move and retreat as if it were a ship. If this unit is blockaded, it is destroyed. So it's exactly the same. However, it does have production of 7, meaning you can produce up to 7 units in every single one of your space docks that you've got flying around. It flies around with 2 movement now, making that guerrilla warfare idea that might have been planted in your head all the more viable and powerful, and has a little bit more capacity of 5, making it like this sort of carrier that produces things all by itself. That's really cool, and it's, you know, one of the best things that the Clan of Saar have in their arsenal. It's really, really fun. The Clan of Saar's promissory note is called Rag's Call, and it reads, after you commit 1 or more units to land on a planet. This is the person who you're giving this card to will have this ability over you. So when they're the ones committing 1 or more units to land on a planet, the text reads, remove all of the Saar player's ground forces from that planet and place them on a planet controlled by the Saar player. Then return this card to the Saar player. So if you hand this off to somebody, you're essentially saying, at any point you can take any planet from me without any force. My troops will be magically teleported to a different planet, but that planet is chosen by the player, so it could be the least useful place that you've got in your repertoire of planets. This one is relatively powerful, but I think it's something that you shouldn't really ignore. You could make really good friends with this if you're starting to be a bit scary, but you really want a friend on the table. Give him this. It could be a big deal. Promissory notes are tricky at the best of times. They're very hard to give you recommendations on, because every play dynamic is going to be different with each group of players. But this one, I think this is one that you should definitely try and get out there, especially if you're trying to make allies. It's not too bad. You don't lose any troops. You'll lose a planet for sure, especially if they decide to exercise it. But yeah, it's not something at the end of the game like for other races their promissory notes could be. So don't totally ignore Rag's Call altogether. And that's how the Clan of Saar work. They're one of my favourite races to play as in the game. I think that's because of their unpredictable nature and how they can zip around everywhere. Their floating space dock things are really fun. The fact that you can use a asteroid field as like your own little secret factory to build things in is just great. They start off with anti-mass deflectors, making that viable right from the start of the game, and I do think you should go down the blue technology route with them. Chaos mapping is a great technology. you know, just stopping other people from being able to activate the asteroid field that you're in is part of it, but the free production every single turn is great. Keep going with blue technologies is my other recommendation. Get yourself gravity drive, but the one you really want is light wave deflector. Gravity drive is going to give you +1 to the move value of one of your ships. That's probably going to be your floating factory, and if you've got light wave deflector, you're going to be able to zip this move 3 floating factory past all your opponent's units and start producing up to 7 units at a time behind their lines, giving them a war on 2 fronts or a war on 3 fronts or whatever it takes. If you've got a good production engine going with lots of resources, you're going to become this unstoppable just virus of things that just keeps going and going at anywhere they want with no fear of losing their home system. It's really exciting to play these guys aggressively, but they can also play the slow game. They can be really cheeky with the objectives that they pick off, because again, they don't need their home system, they don't need to manage that, they don't need to protect it. Just making them really versatile and really fun. One of the best races in the game for sure. So that's the Clan of Saar. I hope you've learned something from this video. Please check out the rest of the videos in the series if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. Good luck.